Hello, and welcome back to more Reddit stories. The other day, I realized that we haven't really been covering as many strange or unexplainable stories like we used to, so I decided to start bringing those back again starting today. I found plenty of bizarre ones from the usual places like the glitch in the Matrix Subreddit, the Paranormal Subreddit, LetsNotMeet, and some others. Before we jump into the strangeness, however, I'd like to take a minute to thank today's sponsor, Babbel. For those of you who aren't yet aware, Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world. Now, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but my family is actually Italian, and back in 2017, we went across the Atlantic and took a trip to Italy. For me, this was the first time that I would ever be meeting many of my extended family members, and unfortunately, I didn't really know a lot of Italian, and I couldn't really communicate with them. There have been talks about us actually going back to Italy within the next couple of years, so in the meantime, I plan on using Babbel to actually learn Italian. They've risen to the top by offering lessons which are taught by real language educators who have actually spent years of their lives teaching students how to acquire new languages. What I love most about Babbel is that it actually teaches you how to have real-world conversations through the lessons and exercises within the app. So to give you an example of one of these exercises, the app will sometimes ask you to listen and repeat certain phrases to actually get yourself used to talking. So here we're going to use the word piacere, which means pleased to meet you. Piacere. Another one is arrivederci, which means goodbye. Arrivederci. To be honest, it's a lot of fun, and it feels like you're actually just playing a game. It feels good to actually be learning something and be productive while you're on your phone instead of just messing around on Instagram or whatever. Babbel was actually kind enough to offer the viewers of this channel 60% off the price of their subscription, which you can redeem by clicking the link in the description. Thanks again to Babbel for sponsoring this video, and with all of that being said, grab a snack, get comfortable, and shut the blinds. Let's dive in. This happened many years ago when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I wouldn't describe the area I was in as backwoods necessarily, but it was a wooded 100-plus acre ranch. The land is in the southwestern United States. My family owns the property, and we have family reunions every year and all stay for about 5 days to camp. There's an area of the ranch where we all set up camp before cooking and eating. Getting to that part of the ranch requires driving through a small village and several gates for about 2 miles. The first gate beyond the village is slightly past a set of railroad tracks. I know that's a lot of description, but it's relevant later in the story. Because I had been camping at the ranch for as long as I could remember and the land was private, my parents would allow me to go off on my own during the day as long as I didn't go too far. I'd spend time walking the property near our camp area looking for arrowheads or playing near the water. On this day, I left the large camp area after lunch, which was around 11:30, and told my mom I was going to a nearby creek. I planned on catching some tadpoles to bring back to camp and be back on time for a swimming trip my cousins were planning. They wanted to go to a nearby river, and I really didn't want to miss it. I made it down to the creek and got several tadpoles. I probably spent a total of 15 minutes down there. To get back to camp, I would have needed to either climb up a relatively steep embankment with a lot of loose rock, or circle around on a longer route with a flat trail. I'd usually go up the embankment, but I didn't have a top for the water bottle I caught the tadpoles with, and didn't want to risk slipping and spilling them out. I had never walked the longer trail by myself, but I had with my dad, and felt confident I could find my way back to camp on it. As I walked back to camp, I had my head down looking for arrowheads in the washed-out areas of the trail. I started feeling a little creeped out as I continued walking. We all know that feeling, like someone is watching. It was unsettling, but I chalked it up to just getting spooked being on the trail by myself. Now, the next part, I can't explain whatsoever. It's as if a light switch was turned on, or someone snapped their fingers, and I came back to reality. Except, when I came to, I wasn't on the trail I had been on before. I was near the railroad tracks, and it was completely dark. My mom was standing in front of me, shaking my shoulders and yelling, "Where were you?" Two things I remember really clearly about the moments I came to are, one, the look of fear, anger, and relief in my mom's tearful eyes as she was yelling at me, and two, the confusion I felt about what the hell was going on. The last thing I remembered was walking on the trail back to camp, and now suddenly it was dark and I was at the railroad tracks leading to the ranch, which was over 2 miles away. The best way I can describe it is to compare it to the movie The Butterfly Effect. The main character would be living in one moment, and then suddenly he'd wake up somewhere entirely different. My parents drove me back to camp, and I learned it was 10:30 p.m. This meant I had been gone for 11 hours, 10 and a half of which I can't account for to this day. My parents and all my family had understandably freaked the hell out when I hadn't returned to camp. They had been looking for me all day. I was a really good kid growing up and almost never broke any rules, so my parents were baffled at my behavior. I tried to explain to them that I had no memory of getting to the tracks, but they didn't believe me. They thought maybe I got lost and was embarrassed to admit it. This was the only time I've ever experienced something like this. I can't explain how unsettling it is to not be able to account for all those hours I was gone. Was it coincidence that I had that creeped out feeling on the trail and then just lost 10 and a half hours of my life? I wish I had answers for what happened. This next one is one of the strangest posts I've seen made to the site in quite a while. OP starts off by showing us this image before going on to state that their mother sent it to them in the middle of the night, weirded out by the fact that a single thread of her comforter appeared to be floating in the air. Although very strange, not much seems to have come from that initial event. They then go on to state the following. 3 months after sending me this, she calls me scared out of her mind and told me to look in the back, and it genuinely hurts my head. She was home alone. The first image is the original, and the second is an enhanced version. We recognize her as my past aunt. You can even barely make out Winnie the Pooh on the right of her chest. There is so much going on in this short little post. From what I can see, either A, this was something otherworldly, or B, it was a home intruder who somehow snuck in and out of the house completely undetected. Granted, that still doesn't explain the string, which I don't know if there's some sort of a scientific explanation behind how that could have happened, but nevertheless, I really don't know. I grew up in the Sierra Nevadas. I wasn't big on camping, but spent a good chunk of my childhood weekends hiking with family and friends. The summer that I was 16, about 10 years ago now, my cousin, C, had come back from her first year of college, and her boyfriend, Jay, was visiting. Jay wanted to go on a hike with lake views, and C and I knew just the one. It was one of our favorites. The three of us set off on this hike. The trail isn't the easiest to find, but it's really popular with locals because of the view and general lack of tourists. We saw a couple of other hikers, some with dogs. It's an in-and-out trail that takes about 2 to 3 hours to the top and 2 to 3 hours back down. There are some smaller trails that branch off. We make it to the top in good time and enjoy our lunches overlooking the lake. After about an hour, we hear a scream in the distance. Specifically, a mountain lion scream. If you've never heard a mountain lion scream, it's really unnerving. It sounds a bit like a very loud, terrified woman just yelling. This is not good because when a mountain lion screams, it's part of a mating ritual. That means there are multiple mountain lions and close. The bears in the Sierras are softies, but the mountain lions will attack you. They'll attack your pets. They've been known to attack bikers. Jay was really freaked out. C and I were weary, but it wasn't the first time we'd heard mountain lions, and we had both seen them before. C and I tell Jay that we need to pack up and get back down the mountain. About 40 minutes into the hike back, Jay realized that he forgot his phone at the lookout in his rush to leave. Of course. We decided that C and Jay would hike back up to retrieve his phone, and I would stay there on the trail to warn any other potential hikers that there are lions in the area. This is obviously not ideal for any of us, but seemed like the best choice at the time. I found a nice rock to sit on by the trail and was going through the pictures we took. C and Jay had been gone for almost an hour when I heard the scream again. And it was hard to tell, but I thought it was closer than before. I start to freak out because being alone would not have been good if the lion was nearby. About 20 minutes after that, I hear the scream again, and there is now zero doubt that it's closer. Logically, I know that lions don't scream when hunting. They're quiet. If a lion was hunting me, I wouldn't know it. That knowledge did not make me any less scared. A couple minutes after that, I hear it again, extremely close by. I'm looking around and trying to find the best place for me to stand, back covered in case of the worst. Suddenly, I see something standing out of the corner of my eye. Standing still, 20 feet down the trail, maybe a couple feet off of it, is a man. He's completely naked, he's filthy, he's skinny, and he's just standing there looking at me. If you don't know where you're going, it's easy to get lost in the woods around there. And it doesn't take long, being alone, lacking food and water in the wilderness, to make people a little disoriented, a little crazy. My immediate response is that this man is probably a lost hiker, and judging by how dirty he was, he'd been lost a long time. He needed help. I started walking towards him, asking if he was okay. I suddenly get this feeling of wrongness. I don't know how else to describe it, but the hair stood up on my neck. I stopped in my tracks, maybe 15 feet away now, and had the overwhelming urge to run. He looks at me, then opens his mouth wide and screams. Not a normal scream. Worse, it was just like the mountain lion. It occurred to me that we were probably hearing him the whole time. It was the single most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed. I started screaming too. Why was he just standing there yelling? Do I run? Do I get out the bear mace? Suddenly, he closed his mouth, turned around, and ran back into the woods very quickly. He disappeared into the trees, but the feeling of wrongness stuck with me. I considered bolting down the trail, but I decided to wait for C and J, who luckily arrived within 10 or 15 minutes. I told them what happened, and we decided to call it into the Rangers when we got service. I've always been left with the unsettling question: did I see a mentally ill, lost hiker who really needed my help? Or did I see something else? Something not human, mimicking the call of a mountain lion and stalking us down the mountain. I had a friend over last night. We ran into each other earlier in the day, and we made plans to have dinner together. She comes over, and we hang out on the couch for around an hour, just chatting and whatnot. I stand up because I get a phone call, so I go into my bedroom for around 10 or 15 minutes. I go back out, and she's not there anymore. Okay, so she's in the bathroom, right? I sit on the couch to wait for her, but she doesn't come out. I go to check on her, and the bathroom is empty. Now I'm weirded out. Did she leave for no reason? I didn't hear the door open or close, and I have a pretty heavy door. I even go outside into the hallway to check if she was there for some reason, but she's just promptly disappeared. Now I'm thinking she just left for whatever reason, so I call her. It rings for a while, and she picks up. Immediately, it seemed weird. If she just left my flat, she should be on the street, but it's very quiet wherever she is, and she sounds like she just woke up. I ask her why she left my flat, and she had no idea what I was talking about. I get frustrated and ask where she is. I'm at home taking a nap. Your phone call woke me up. I could hear rustling sheets, and as I said, there's no way her side of the phone call would be so quiet if she just left my flat. I live in a busy area. I request to video call her, and there she is, in her home, in her bed. She has no makeup on, she's in her pajamas, looking confused, and her eyes are still kind of puffy from sleep. I ask her if she remembered coming to my flat. She looked confused. Did we make plans today? She said that after running into me, all we did was chat, say goodbye, and then she went home to take a nap. Obviously, there's no way she got home, removed her makeup, undid her hair, and changed her clothes within 15 minutes. She lives like half an hour away from me. I have no clue what to think of it. Now, I'm not sure what freaks me out more about this story. Either the idea that some crazy supernatural event happened here, or the idea that this person literally just hallucinated their friend coming over for an entire hour. What makes these kinds of stories especially confusing is the fact that most of them come from people who have absolutely zero history of ever having hallucinations or any sort of mental illness like this. My cousin picked up a hitchhiker about 20 years ago. Nice enough guy. Cousin was hungry, so stopped at McDonald's. Grabbed the hitchhiker some breakfast, too. Dropped him off where the guy said he was headed, and no big deal. The next morning, my cousin's watching the morning news and sees that hitchhiker's face. Dude was a serial killer and had killed someone that picked him up. Cousin calls the cops and they have him come in. Turns out the hitchhiker had killed the very next person after my cousin that had given him a ride. He'd killed a few people that had given him rides. That was his MO. They asked the hitchhiker why he didn't kill my cousin. He said, "I planned to, but he was a really nice young man. He bought me breakfast. I couldn't kill someone that bought me breakfast." Back in junior year of high school, when I was 16, my family and I were in the process of moving our things into a new apartment. Near the end of the day, me, my dad, and a family friend were walking from the apartment to the elevator so we could go to the car and grab the last few things from it. When my dad stepped into the elevator, the door closed almost immediately. It was specifically weird because the door had only been open for a couple seconds, and it closed way faster than I've ever seen an elevator close before or after this. The door wouldn't open, so we're all confused. We're talking to Dad, he can hear us, we can hear him. Then suddenly, mid-sentence, his voice just cuts off entirely, and the door opens. And the elevator is just empty. So me and the family friend just sort of stare for a second. I step in and look around. No sign of Dad. I step back out at the elevator, and immediately the doors close again and then reopen. And Dad's just standing in the middle of the elevator, looking dumbfounded. So we ask him what happened. He explains that from his perspective, after the elevator door closed, at one point he stopped hearing us, and the elevator went up. Then it just stopped, and he heard what seemed to be wild animals he couldn't identify, and the sound of scratching on the door. This felt like it lasted around 5 minutes to him before suddenly the elevator door opened without the elevator ever feeling like it went back down. We lived there for over a year. We never did figure out what happened, and the elevator never did that again. My heart is already beating fast just thinking about telling this story. Only those closest to me know that this happened until now. When I was 25 years old, I was driving home from work one night. I lived in Los Angeles at the time. I was driving on Sunset Boulevard heading west towards my apartment in Brentwood. For those that are not familiar with the area, there's an expanse of sunset near UCLA that is very curvy. It's 2 lanes on either side with no shoulder. It was 8:30 on a Saturday night, so there was some traffic. I was driving along, and all of a sudden, about 50 feet in front of me, I saw a car, but I was looking at the passenger door. A car had spun out of control and was perpendicular in my lane. I didn't have time to stop. I looked to my right, and there was a car next to me, so I had nowhere to go. I instinctively turned my car all the way to the right anyway. Once I had cleared the first car, I spun the steering wheel all the way to the left, still trying to avoid the second car. While all of this was happening, I remembered a time with my mom at Disney World when I was 3. This is not a memory I have ever really had. I vaguely remember parts of that trip, but this memory was not one of them. I realized then that my life was flashing before me, and I was going to die. I had never been so sure of anything. Every part of me knew I was about to die. I started screaming. To this day, I don't know if I vocalized anything or if it was all in my head. I yelled, "No! No, this isn't fair. I'm not done yet." All the while swerving all over Sunset Boulevard. I suddenly stopped my car, and I was now perpendicular in the opposing lane of traffic. I looked around, and there was not a single car anywhere. It was like everything had been wiped clean. I put my car in reverse and proceeded home. I did not see a single car the rest of the way there. I was only 5 minutes away from my home at that point, but Sunset Boulevard on a Saturday night was completely empty. I got to my apartment and parked on the street. I didn't see one single person. While walking to my apartment, I came to the conclusion that I had died, and because I said no, I was stuck in some limbo. I had never wanted my roommate to be home so badly. Unfortunately, she wasn't. I called one of my best friends and said, "I need to ask you some questions. Please just answer me and I'll explain after." I asked her my name, my age, what city we lived in, and the date. Obviously, she was very alarmed. I explained that I thought I was dead, and I wasn't sure I was really on the phone with her. She tried to convince me that I was alive and that everything was okay. There was physically no way for me to have escaped that situation. There was nowhere for the car on the right to go. This moment has haunted me my whole life. There have been times when I have questioned my existence. I've wondered if my life since has been a very detailed death trip and I'm actually lying on Sunset Boulevard, bleeding out. And on that note, we're drawing a close to this video. I just wanted to take the time to say thank you to the 2 Supporter Plus members of the channel who joined before I could even announce it. I recently opened up membership options, so if you guys are interested, head over to the main page of the channel and click the join button to learn more. With that being said, I plan on starting to upload some more personal life videos to the second channel, John Fox, so if you guys want to check those out, that will be shown in the outro. But that's pretty much all I've got for you guys. I'll see you in the next one.